This is Sherry Dargenio, and welcome today to the webinar topic of roles and organization access in Unanet. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day today to learn more about gaining more control over your businesses, your organization in Unanet by granting or restricting who can, edit things in your system, Unanet system, view specific information, who can report on it. Really, it's one of the more tougher topics because everyone has access to their roles and the access of the organization at the project level and at the organization level. So I really wanted to take some time out today to kind of cover these topics and have you thinking about your own Unanet system. So we have a few housekeeping notes. You may experience some lag time or internet delay. So if your screen stops updating, you just try dropping off and re-recording, re-entering the conference again. We encourage you to ask questions via the webinar questions box to the right of your screen that looks something like that. So you can type in your questions there. And I have Tandy Fleckner, another customer account manager, that's monitoring that questions box today. And again, we welcome your comments, feedbacks, or suggestions, so feel free to email us at cam@unanet.com. And just a quick note before we get started that we are recording this webinar. Tandy's going to hit the record button, and we'll be posting it to our Knowledge Center in the next few days. And we'll notify you when it's been posted. And we'll be sending out this PowerPoint to you shortly after the webinar has been completed today. So let's get started. So we get a number of questions from our customers when we're working with them. Some common questions that we hear is really, how do we allow project managers to view only certain projects? So we don't want all the project managers to view all the project information. Or how can I restrict a project manager from having access to edit project information, at the profile level or the budget level? Those budgeting information? Or how can I restrict the view of cost rates for those project managers? You want them seeing that costing information for their users. Or how do I support multiple organizations in Unanet? How do I grant or restrict access to those multiple organizations? Well, why is access important in Unanet? Well, it really is because it should mirror your business rules and processes. Unanet's a software tool that really works best when you have mapped out your business rules and your organization hierarchy and the roles and job functions of all of your users. And really, that's going to make your Unanet setup work. So our job is to make sure that any of these things that you put in place are working in the system, and it means that you have the right access perspective for those roles, certain people, certain organizations with your company, and that they have the right access and, more importantly, the restriction of access to information you don't want people seeing. So as you've mapped out that as a business, we want to make sure your network configuration is mirroring that configuration. So there's several levels of access when we talk in the system regarding the roles and visibility. So the first one in here in red is roles. The second one is specific access at the project level, and then organizational access that you may or may not want to set up. But I'll talk about each one of those today. So these three levels or tiers of controls are in place for granting or, like I said, restricting access in the system. The global access via the roles, this red box, this resides within the person profile. Now the next level of access is this project-specific access, project access at the project level. Now what this means is if you're a project manager at a global level in Unanet, that's your role, it doesn't necessarily mean that your Unanet is configured to allow access to all projects in the system. It's the combination of your role and access at the project level or at the organizational level that allows users to do their job, to create, edit, view metrics or information in Unanet. So it's really important to know that it's not just the role, but they have to have access at the project level or at an organization or a grouping of projects to be able to do things in that project or set of projects. The roles that we see in the person profile, the admin, HR admin, project manager, etc. So these describe the job function that you're granted within Unanet. So the very highest level of rights and visibility is this administrator role and that HR admin role. And the key to setting up your system is to understand the differences between these two roles for those people who are doing the administrative functions in Unanet. Now, if you ever at a point in time you need a quick place to find that information, you can roll your mouse over this little eye icon, and it'll show you information that defines what these individual roles do. So for this admin role, the admin role has access to all data and all reports, all things in Unanet, all modifications in Unanet, and exporting, importing information, etc. So the difference between that HR admin and the administrator role is that the HR administrator role has access to just people data and people reports. It can modify and do anything for the people in Unanet. So they don't have the same level of visibility to project data or project reports. So this is where Unanet draws that line between those two roles. So it's good to know that. So the end user roles. So other standard Unanet user roles are the timesheet user, expense user, and the Unisource user. So in order to create a timesheet or use or submit them, you have to have that timesheet user role. Even if you're the administrator in Unanet, you still have to have this role checked in order to create and input a timesheet. Now the Unisource role, that allows that a user to be planned. So if you're doing resource planning within the Unanet project portfolio license, you'll need this role to be able to select these particular resources and plan them. So if you're planning a user, then they need to also have that Unisource user role in the profile to be able to be planned. So again, these are required roles in order to enter actuals in Unanet, the timesheet and expense user, and really these are the key roles for probably 90% of your organization. Okay, so project roles. This is probably a really important chart here. So this project manager, it's considered, the project manager is considered the highest level of a project role in Unanet with access to manipulate, project settings, creating a project, reviewing them, changing budget information, having access to all the project reports for that project. While a project lead, project lead has limited access to project profile settings, but they can manipulate or edit task or that work breakdown structure information. The project approver, that's tied to specifically to the approval of time and expenses for this particular project that they have access to. So that's really about the approving time and expenses that are associated with that project. So in our system, there are 3 different roles that could be set up to approve a timesheet, and you may have it set up that all 3 roles need to be accountable within that process for your approvals. So third could be this customer that is typically an outside approval, and some of our customers use this role for maybe an executive level sponsor on a project that also requires an approval on a timesheet. Some actually use it for the customer. They would allow the customer to have a Unanet user license and access to log into Unanet and approve any time expense reports via the customer role. And then finally, the project viewer role can report on project-specific metrics, but really they're unable to create or edit anything in the projects. They're just really running reports on the projects that they have access to. So this chart I thought would be helpful to displaying which project roles have what capability in Unanet, and it might be a great resource for you when you're thinking about setting up roles or reevaluating the roles in your Unanet for your current people. So, do your project managers create new projects and input budget information, or is that really a contracts manager? Maybe your project manager really only needs to have the project lead role, which gives access to just specific task information and editing the task budgets. But your contracts manager would want to be the project manager to create that project and put the project level information. So just some things to ponder and think about. All right, so let's take a look at the access at that project level for these jobs that we have defined as roles in Unanet, remembering that it's the marriage or combination of roles and access to either a particular project or access that defines who and what we can view, edit, or even report on. So many people may have many hats in Unanet. They may need many roles for a particular person. For instance, just because you're the project manager for a project, it does not mean that you have the ability to plan or assign people to work on your project. These are additional roles that needed to be added to your profile and then given access either at the project or the organizational access to a group of projects. So to define these roles at the project level, the project profile that you have your tabs, you see you have your tabs here across the top, then you'll see the second tab, this Access tab, which will governs access to this particular project. This project here is called a fixed price schedule project for my customer Amazon. So as a default, all users that have these roles and have org access for billing manager, billing viewers, project managers, access to this project will be able to have access to all the information here. Again, this means at a global level that all project managers would be able to have access to the project. But if the organization access tab, the person profile, they've been given the rights to this project. We'll see this just shortly. So if you drill down further under the administrator tab on the left-hand side, you'd be able to define which people with that job function will you want to grant access for that project. So for example, allowing very specific project managers access to the project, or in this case, the project lead. So to do so, you just select the administrators tab on the left-hand side on the project profile and choose the role that you're going to be associating and selecting the available project manager or project lead in our case here. And once you've completed that, you'll have assigned that project manager, in our case the project lead, on this particular project to govern and have, those capabilities. Project management, they can create, update budget information. With the project lead, they can update task information. So project administrators, they grant access to projects, and it can be specified by a project and a role. Project leads, project approvers, can only be assigned at the project level. So you'll notice that's why those project lead and project approvers are grayed out on that person profile. It's because it's only granted access to those roles at the project level. So as project administrators, well, just interesting to note, can be imported from other systems. And if you currently have an integration with Deltek or Dynamics or another system, this information is part of what could be imported in when the projects are set up via the other systems. So just to recap here, the project access specified by the project and the role, those leads and approvers are only assigned at the project level. That's why they're grayed out at the person profile, and they can only be set up and granted access at the project level. And there can be properties that can be set to restrict alternates by role. So if you don't want any other timesheet user being a project lead, you can set that up to not allow that as an alternate. And then finally, the project administrators can be imported in like we talked about. So we're going back here. So we talked about roles, we talked about access at the project level. So let's talk a little bit about org access, which is an optional idea here that you could set up in the system. So here's an example of my organization hierarchy that I have in my demo system here. So let's review a little bit about this potential hierarchy that you can set up here. So I have this example here, and I've got my Success North division, and it has an integration organization, a engineering organization, and even a subcontractor organization for my North division. So these are organizations just at a lower level. I call them sub-organizations. And under each sub-organization, that's where I have my associated projects. So the more of a hierarchy that you define that truly reflects your company's structure, so the more ability you're going to have to set up the proper access and, more importantly, restrictions for people and projects based on this hierarchy. So let's look at this view in Unanet. That's under the Organization tab, and I've selected the tree view and expanded it all, so you can see a hierarchy here So I'm going to be able to grant access to any one of these sub-organizations or the higher level organization. So that's the beauty of having a more hierarchy versus a flat organization. That makes sense. You'll need administrative access in order to see this tree view of your organizational hierarchy, but this is just a sample. So this is the key right here. This is an important point here. For each person at their person profile, the administrator is going to grant access to one or more organizations. So they have access to do that job in the organization. So whatever role it is, that job function, it's not only that job and that role of this person profile, but it's access to that particular, in our case, organization or set of organizations or all of the organizations. So remember, just because a user has the project manager role doesn't mean he or she can manage anything until they've been given either the project access at a particular project or that we showed before, the organization access to a set of organizations. So in this example, the user's been given all of these roles: the billing manager, project viewer, resource assigner, and the resource assigner at the project level and for a group of people. But for the billing manager, since the organization is none, he can't view the billing info and process any invoices. So for each role, access has to be granted for none of the organizations, all the organizations, or at least a selection of organizations here. Or it can be done at the project level, project by project. But if you're going to have someone work with a group of projects, it's easier to have them with that role have access to that group of projects. And to be able to do that, that's where you'd select the organization access. And you can say, again, all, none, or selected. And you can see here I've selected that Nicholas Supervisor is going to be that manager for people that are in the system engineering role here, engineering organization here. And he only has access, organizational access, as the manager for people here. And he doesn't have access to Success East or Success South, just in this under Success North here. So that's really the key point here. Okay, so now let's take a look just a little bit further at the project organization assignments. I wanted to make sure that you understood this idea as well, because this is where an administrator would grant permission to a particular grant permission to a person organization for that project in order for them to charge time to that project. And this really would be useful, for example, to easily assign a group of people, a people organization, or maybe all of your people to a company-wide administrative or indirect project, such as holidays, for example. We, as a best practice, say you want to set up your holidays, and for that holiday project where those hours are associated, you'd want to maybe grant organizational access for all of the people so those holidays would show up in their timesheets. So let's talk a few more moments about some more roles, and let's talk about those people roles. Now, if you're looking to have visibility to data and people reports, then you'd want to add those to the list of roles, managers and viewers. So managers have access to the system in the ability to prove time sheets and expense reports for their people that they have org access to. So they have access to people reports in those approval groups. So managers provide the function of approving time and expense reports and also viewing people in their approval groups. Viewers, however, on the other hand, they don't have that same data access. They have read-only access to the people reports. So this may be read-only access to, say, a time details report, but wouldn't be able to access or manipulate any data, but they're viewing data for those people. Now there's more project roles here. In addition to the project manager, you might also have a resource planner, resource assigner, or resource requester for that particular project. This is very important if you're using resource planning tools down in the project portfolio license type. If you're not familiar with these roles or you haven't seen them in your system, you probably haven't been upgraded to our premier product, which is the project portfolio. This is with the requester and the resource planner. So the way it works, you may have certain people who can request resources for a project or a task, and other people that can actually plan those resources. So you may have a different set of people with those jobs that you even assign resources for that particular project. So again, you would have the project manager role, and then in addition to that project manager, you would have check the resource planner, resource assigner, and or the resource requester. And then you'd either give access at the project level for those roles or organizational access to a group of projects, which would be under the organization. Now, a few more roles is the global billing and other roles, billing manager, billing rate manager. It really comes into play if you're using our billing function or our costing function found in the Unanet project tracking or the portfolio license. So when you assign a person with the role of cost rate manager or bill rate manager, this allows them to see cost rates, which is person's salary, or their cost to the organization. So those who work in finance or accounting or those responsible for bottom line project cost or variances between costs and billing may require access to these cost rates. But a standard project manager typically would not have access to cost rates. So ultimately it's up to you and how you want to run your business and what roles you want to give. So two property settings that I wanted to review for you to just add on to the information here for the cost rate information to consider is under the access permissions for the administrator under the property setting under Unanet access permissions. It's this cost reporting for non-cost rate managers and project cost reporting for non-cost rate managers. So the first allows project managers to view costs in the project status report without having the cost rate manager role. So you can check this one first box as property and allow project managers that they may not have the cost rate manager role, but they'll be able to see costing aggregate information in the status report, the project status report. The second property here that you see here in my example is checked, is if you have project access to a particular project based on the roles and access we've just described, but you don't have the cost rate manager role, this property will allow you to view costs in the project accounting sections of those reports. The cost summary report, job summary report, cost summary by element. So this will typically allow the project manager to view cost aggregates in these accounting reports for all labor, but you still wouldn't see the individual cost rate for a particular user. So just some property notes for you to know. So some of the first things to consider in tips is those property settings we talked about. There's few settings that can enable, grant, or limit access or permission. I'm going to go over one here shortly. Secondly, some considerations to be made when setting up roles is the integration with other systems. You might want to be sure your roles are mapped appropriately and that the data is able to flow from mapping your Unanet roles with any other systems from a project perspective that you're reporting on or sharing information on. And then access to projects can be specified by project and by the role. For instance, project leads and project approvers can only be assigned at that project level, like I indicated before. So when you're making considerations on reporting access, the primary project administrator can be used in the project search filter and list. You'll notice there's primary versus alternate project administrators. And then your project administrators can be imported from other systems. So I wanted to also talk about different scenarios of how you can run your business in Unanet, whether you're an open organization where all your users are really seeing all the information, or whether it's a more restrictive scenario where you want to really be restrictive on who can see what and who can edit what. So this is a sample of a very open organization looking here under the property settings. The org access, and again it's under the access permissions from global settings. You can configure your Unanet to default to all so that when you go into the person profile and give org access, it will automatically default access to all for a person's organization here. So again, this is for all of these different types of roles. There's a settings here to default to all. It's open. When a person is created brand new and has a person profile and going to the organizational access, the default will give access to all those person organizations. So this is an open scenario. So in this scenario 2, at the project profile level, the project access for roles is enabled and these radio boxes are all checked. So you see here for billing manager, billing viewer, project manager, project viewer, they're all defaulted to being checked, all these radio boxes. So this is an open organization. You've given everyone that has that role the ability to assign themselves on projects or roles by clicking on the self-assign option, and also to have all of these different administrator access roles open. Again, it's a very open configuration at the project level. Now, a more restrictive organization here, we are at the person profile for our supervisor where there's probably more standard with most of our customers. Once you've set up their roles from the person profile perspective, you can drill down into the org access and either give them none, like this one that's seen here, which means that they cannot actually use their role at this time, or you can give them some selective access to certain organizations. So it might be that the default was set to none, and then the administrator needs to specifically come into each person profile, go to the organizational access, and grant org access to certain selected organizations. So you see here, we've granted the Nicholas supervisor to just have access to this people organization engineering, the system Success North engineering. Now I could check in to Success North, and that would give access for that role for all of those projects or people here based on that role. So I've gone to the very lowest level here, but I can certainly click here or click here, giving it all access to everything. So again, that's the organizational access. So I'm being a little more restrictive here in this case. And again, at the project level, it's being very restrictive, setting the in the open org example, remember we had left all the radio boxes checked. Well, in this example, we would not have any of those radio boxes checked. So on the contrary, you would want to assign each particular role under the administrator tab here, assigning, for instance, here our project manager to a project that we're looking at here, so that you could actually require the users are added as project administrators to each project they report on, and then assign them at the project level. Because this gives a little bit more restrictive access at the lowest level at the project level versus the organization. And it's more restrictive access to just exactly who you want to act as a project manager or the project viewer or the resource assigner to that project. All right, so just to kind of sum up here before I go into the demo system and show you a few other tricks here, really understanding Unanet access is really, want to understand, the business process and rules that you have, and we want to be able to mirror that, whether it's an open organization or more restrictive or the most restrictive. And you want to be able to control access at that multiple level, and that can be at the project level or an organizational level or groups of organizations. And, of course, we do support that for multiple organizational structure. The key is having a hierarchy that reflects or mirrors your organization and your organization hierarchy as well. And then finally, that will make it easy to manage, because those people who are doing their jobs are only doing those jobs or acting on those objects, people or projects otherwise, and being able to manage those and just manage just that information. So let's take a look at some key reports that you may not have been aware of. I just wanted to remind you of some key things. So let's hop over to my Unanet here. The first thing I wanted to show you is under the Organization tab, there is this tree view. If you click on tree view here, it comes up and you can expand just certain parts of things. Maybe here's my Success North, and just look at the Success North and the sub-organizations. Or I can expand it all and look at the entire organization. So this is where you want to understand that hierarchy. And if you define a hierarchy, this nesting ability, then you will be able to grant access or restrict access based on some sub-organizations. So another thing that I wanted to show are some key reports that you might just, may not remember or have been aware of before, but I wanted to remind you. Oh, the first thing is going to the people list. Let's take a look. I'm going to open up a new link to a tab here so I can toggle back and forth with this new multiple tab here. So I want to do a people list, but I want to list by showing all of these roles here. I'm not sure if you knew you could show the roles for your people list. So this is one way to kind of just regroup and look and see, okay, I've got, my roles here. What roles have been granted for them? As you can see, I have a number of administrators in my demo system here. So is that the correct thing? Is that the right thing that I want to do? So this is very informative to be able to understand. Unisource user, these are all the users that I would be able to plan in a planning grid. So the next thing to understand would be the org access report. Okay, who has access to what? So let's look at the status report for people and the organizational access report. And you can see here, I'm going to list all the access, all, none, selected for all of the roles and for all types, the person and projects. You can be more selective if you want to look at just the ones that have none, or just the ones that have all, or just particular roles, or for a particular project or persons. So you can see here, I can look to see that Emma, and these are the roles that she has and what kind of access she has. She's got access as a person for a resource assigner. She's a resource assigner for these particular person organizations. And here for this project organizations, for projects that will be found underneath here. Here you can see I've got Erica, and she has no access to project or persons for the billing manager, or the assigner, a resource assigner, resource planner. So in this case, she's really deemed ineffective at this point in time. Erica's got the roles, but she doesn't have the right access unless she's got access at the project level, which she might have, but not at the organizational level. So let's take a look at one more key report that is that administrator level at the project level. So I checked organizational access, but let me check the project administrator. So I can select a particular project and look at all of the people with all of these roles to understand, okay, what's the access that people have for that particular project. So for instance, here's a person organization, the deploy organization in the southeast area, and you've got each person, Emma. It looks like I've just got one. And she's got project access at that lowest project level as an approver for this particular project, and she's the lead on these two projects. She has org access to these three as a resource assigner. Remember, the key is making it click the fact that you not only have to have that project role, but the access at the project level or at the organizational level. That grants them access and, more importantly, restricts access to all of the other projects and organizations. Okay, I hope this has helped out somewhat today. I wanted to check in with Tandy and see how we're doing with some of our questions. How's it going, Tandy?
Hi, Sherry. It's going great. I do have a few questions to share.
Good.
The first question from a customer was asking about the HR admin role versus the full admin role, and wondering if an HR admin can export timesheets and expense reports to QuickBooks, because she's saying that her HR admin processes payroll in QuickBooks.
You know, that is a good question, and I don't know off the top of my head, but let me just log out and log in as my HHR admin here. It's HHR, and test that out really quick here. So I have an HHR admin role in my system here, and the key to know is to be able to have go to the admin and see that I have export capabilities. So yes, I don't have import capabilities, but I do have export capabilities.
That's
so
right.
When I click into the export, I have it unlimited too, because if you're familiar with the administrator who has access to exporting and importing all of the different objects, this is limited to people type objects, so approval groups, expenses, time, persons, and organization. So it's export only and somewhat limited.
Okay, excellent.
So I hope that helps.
Okay. And then the other question was with regard to reporting, and I think you actually already answered it quite well. The question was, is there one report that would show the person, role, and org access? And I know,
yeah. So again, let me go back to that reports tab because I probably went pretty quickly here. So it's going to be under the reports, people reports here. If you'll notice, there's sections of the reports tab. This is about project information, project reporting, and even actuals and comparing with plans, but it's at the project level, and it would really be, accounting-wise, best for the time and materials. Our accounting reports are going to be accounting information for all types of contracts, the time and materials, fixed price, and those cost plus. The people reports are going to be people-based, groups of people, and showing that information on a people versus project base. And under there are these additional people reports, as organizational access report that we show that shows the different type of access and the associated roles. But more importantly is that last one that I showed, which was the reports, people, and the project administrators. So I'm not only showing the roles, but at the project level, what access do I have at the project or the organizational access? So again,
okay,
that's
great.
the project administrator. So that'll show it for basically a good data dump for all of the users in your system if you select all.
Okay, great. And I liked the people list that you ran earlier and showed the roles and organization access, and I was thinking the fact that everyone can save this as a list, is that correct? Save criteria?
Yes, actually that's a great point here. I can save this criteria here, and let's save that to my people tab, and I'll say people. I can name it whatever I want to name it to and save it to whatever dashboard. So I'll see people list with roles. And let me make this a little bit bigger again. And I'm going to save it to my people tab. And so it saved that criteria. So if I go to my people tab, then I can list it. Oh, I'm sorry. People tab here. I can go to my list, and I've saved the people list with roles. I can click right into here and re-execute that report from that dashboard.
Excellent. Yeah, a really quick way, especially if I've had a few questions from customers where they're new to the company and they're not sure who the Unanet admin is, or they're a Unanet admin and wondering who else is a Unanet admin, things like that. So great, quick way to take a look for that information.
Yeah, and then the thing is to remember is the people list with roles. So this is the save list here. So as a user, though, you'll only have access to information based on, based on what person access you have, organization.
Good point. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. Let's see. I have one more question. In our system, I don't see organizations on the top of my home page. Can you tell me why?
Okay. Do you see, you'll have to ask that particular user if they have the administrator privileges. The organization tab is available to the administrators of the system. So your project management roles, roles like that, people manager, they're not going to have access to that organization tab. They have to be an administrator role.
Okay, excellent. Okay, those were the questions that I had.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Well, let's hop back over to my PowerPoint presentation, and these are some of the reports that we took a look at today. I did want to remind everyone that our Champions Conference 2015 is coming up soon. Our early bird registration is going on right now, I think through April 14th, I believe. And we also do have a group registration for 3 or more, and we do have a new pre-conference day, training day on the Wednesday before. That's going to be May 27th, and it is in sunny San Diego. The pre-conference day, really think about that. If you come up to our Unanet.com website, it's on the front page, and click into that, you'll see information about those pre-conference days. We have one about foundations of Unanet. It's just a great refresher course, plus some reporting, key tips for someone maybe new to Unanet or just coming on board, or just a great refresher course. There is one about project management in Unanet, you know, process and enhanced project management using Unanet for your project managers. And then finally, a deep dive into our newest release coming out this quarter, Unanet 10 financials package. So be aware of those. Plus there's additional 20% discount for attending off of upgrades, any services, and customer success packages through September 30th. Of course, our ongoing customer webinars are available to everyone. Our next one is March 5th, and it will give more insight into the Unanet financials on our early adopter program that's going on now for our newest Unanet 10 release financials package. So you might want to listen in on that one. And then, of course, our Knowledge Center that's available under knowledgecenter.unanet.com. I'm sure most of you are aware that's really a great area for customer-facing best practices, FAQs. Our recorded webinars are there as well. So take a look at that. And if you click in here, you'll be able to hop to, there's a hyperlink here to that website, knowledgecenter.unanet.com. Oops, I skipped over too soon here. And it's an area where you can search. There's webinars, topics, FAQs, our instructional guides, and you can search on a particular topic. And our Unanet University has become quite a popular classes. We've sold out of our next administrator training in a couple of weeks. We had administrator training, I think, in January that sold out as well. And we do have cost, revenue, and profit reporting class on the 11th, followed up with the billing and invoicing class on the 12th. So we've got some classes for the next 2 months. If you are interested, you know, let us know. We'd love to have you. They are offered at our home office, and there is also a team in training discount for the first person. It is $800, and for the second person they can attend the class for half off, so 2 for $1,200. So do consider that for any specific training that you might have in mind, and let me know. Send a note to cam@unanet.com if you want to have more information. And again, we do have our project management process enhancements. It's really a new type of program or consulting for you to really help your project management, your PMO office, really engage in the metrics using Unanet through looking at reports, finding actionable, accurate data in those metrics, and data that they can assess and make action upon going back to their users and their projects. There's information of that business flow to those project managers so they can really reduce the accounting efforts needed on those projects, and provide additional training to those project manager teams on those efforts, those reports, save them to your dashboard, how to make action, take action on those reports, and really making sure that the expertise is across the team. So if you're interested in this, let us know. Just tell I want to know more about the project management and helping my project managers really get engaged and use Unanet, and we'll know what you're talking about. And don't forget, you can always contact support at unanet.com or call the number here. They're available to you to answer any daily troubleshooting questions that you might experience. And then all of our resources here that have the hyperlinks for you. So we appreciate you coming today and learning more about roles and org access. Take a look at your Unanet system and you know, look out, print out a few reports and look and see if anybody needs to be cleaned up or reorganized, or if maybe you need to redo your organization structure to be better fit for representing your organization and mirroring your access, more importantly, restricting access for your particular job functions and roles in Unanet.